Another Earth Tools service video. We're going to talk about the reverser function on walk-behind tractors, particularly a BCS here, although some of the Grillo tractors have reversers that function very much like this. This is the reverser linkage lever that gets moved by the cable, which gets moved by the lever up on the handlebar in the case of a BCS. So when I move the lever on the handlebar, this cable is moving this lever back and forth. This spring pushes the lever back this way, and the cable, which is right behind the spring here, is pulling it. So the cable, as it pulls it, compresses the spring, building spring load tension, and then the spring can push it back to the opposite directional mode. So the most common problem we have with these things is that the cables, through just wear, stretch. And when the cable gets stretched enough, when you pull this thing to the fully depressed position, it simply may not move far enough. Wally the shop cat is giving his input as well. So the spring is always going to push it back to this stop. As you can see, there's two stops here that kind of control the amount of travel that this lever has. The spring is always going to push it back to this lever, toward this stop. But it's the cable's job to pull it up to this stop. As you can see, we're coming within probably a millimeter or two of that stop, and that's perfectly acceptable. This tractor is going to drive fine. But if that cable stretches a lot back here, or the clamp slips a little bit because it got loose, then what happens is maybe that when the lever is fully pulled back on the handlebars, I may be here. I may have a 1/4 inch gap. Well, guess what? The gears in the transmission will not be quite engaged at that point, and what you'll get is a grinding or whining sound, and the tractor won't go anywhere. And people call and say, "What's wrong with my tractor? It won't go." Well, it needs to be adjusted. So you would go up here to the top of the handlebars first, where every cable on this machine, except the throttle cable, has a barrel type cable adjuster. This is a hollow bolt that the cable runs through with a jam nut to hold it in place. So what you would do in the case of a stretched reverse cable is, number one, make sure the clamp at the bottom is tight and it didn't slip. Number two, loosen the jam nut with a wrench. I don't have a wrench with me now, but you loosen the jam nut a little bit, back this bolt out. So you unscrew this bolt so more threads are exposed. That increases tension on the cable by removing slack. Turn it out 3-4 turns, however much you need. Check it occasionally, looking at the adjustment or the stops down at the bottom of the tractor, and adjust it back up to where it comes virtually up to the stop. It can either touch the stop lightly or just stop just short of it. It shouldn't be hitting the stop with such force that when you lock the handle back, that it's really putting a lot of force. You can actually bend these stops back if you do that too much. So it's just barely touching, or even a slight gap is acceptable, but not like this. The tractor won't go in gear, it'll grind and not function properly. Very common adjustment, needs to be adjusted usually every 2 to 3 years in average service. That concludes this segment.